We've been seeing price increases every year for the last several years in the Halifax real estate market, and currently, our average sale price in the HRM is 82% higher than it was 5 years ago, or $261,000 higher than it was 5 years ago. So the real estate market was supposed to crash a long time ago, but things keep ticking along the way they always do. But I can't help but wonder, is this really sustainable, or are we finally about to reach the breaking point? Now, just before I get into it, if you're new here, my name's Andrew Stevens, and I've been a realtor in Halifax for 10 years. And if you like this content, just go ahead and hit that like button and hit that subscribe button. And if you're thinking about making a move in the Halifax, Dartmouth area, or if you just want to talk about the real estate market, you can reach out to me anytime with the Calendly link below in my description. So for context, before I get into it, 5 years ago in the HRM, our average sale price was about $319,000, and that's gone up about 82% to $580,000 today. But if I back it up even more than that and I go all the way back to 1980, the average sale price increase year over year since 1980 is 5.7% year over year. And in all that time since 1980, there's only been 1 year that the average sale price has gone down in HRM year over year, and that was all the way back in 1995, and it was very minimal. It was almost just like a little blip on the radar. So even if I look at the 5.7% year over year growth on average, well, a lot of you are going to say, well, that includes the last few years of the pandemic market that were really, really crazy. And yes, of course they were. In 2020, we saw about a 15% increase from 2019. And then in 2021, the sale prices jumped a further 26%. And then in 2022, they went up another 16% from there. But hang on a second. Even if I take out those big 3 years that we had in 2020, 2021, and 2022, if I just go 39 years from 1980 to 2019, the average growth year over year is not that different. It's still at 4.8%. So for argument's sake, for the rest of this video, let's call it 5% average year over year growth is kind of what we're accustomed to seeing in the HRM. Now, if we take these stats and apply this to future years and we do some projections, here's what it looks like. So 3 years from now, with a 5% growth year over year, we'd be at about $671,000 average purchase price. 5 years from now, we'd be at about $740,000 average sale price. And in 10 years from now, we'd be at about $945,000 average sale price across the HRM. Now, I'm a big believer that history will repeat itself, but to be honest, when I look at these 5 and 10-year projections for the average sale price based on a 5% growth year over year across the HRM, this is a really hard number for me to wrap my head around. Doesn't matter what I think about the metrics or anything like that. It's just a very difficult number for me to wrap my head around, especially when you consider that right now, even at $580,000 in terms of real estate prices, they're really expensive, or they're thought to be very expensive here in Halifax. And the thought of almost doubling that is, pretty insane to me, especially when people are struggling so much financially, even outside the real estate world, just with the cost of overall living here in Nova Scotia. So here's my whole point of this video. When I look at the metrics and I look at the stats and I look at everything happening around Nova Scotia and Halifax and the housing market, this is kind of what I'm talking about. Okay, so right now we have very little supply for the demand that we currently have. We're adding a ton of people to the province every year. We're adding about 8 people to the province every year for every 1 unit of housing that we're building. We're adding, let's say, about over 30,000 people, I believe, to the province every year. I forget that exact number, but it's a big one based on the current situation already. We're not building enough houses. To give you some context, in Nova Scotia, we're only building about 4,500 houses a year. And on top of that, the rates are projected to decrease soon. And with that, it's likely going to bring more buyer demand into the market, and it will likely have upward pressure on pricing. So my point is, all of these metrics lead me to believe that this train is not going to start going backwards anytime soon. In my general idea of this, I think that it's likely to keep going the way that it's been going. And on the other hand, when I look at the fact that we're some of the most heavily taxed in the country, we have some of the lowest wages in the country, we have some of the highest expenses and highest cost of living in the country, it's really hard for me to wrap my head around some of those 5 and 10-year projections that I had on the screen earlier in this video. So it brings forth the question, are we about to hit the breaking point? Are we getting to a point where people are just not going to be able to afford homes, and because they can't afford them, there's going to be less demand in the market, which means the supply will increase, which means maybe we see a decrease in price points? But to be honest, I personally don't see that happening. And I get that that might be an unpopular opinion, and that's fine. Everybody's entitled to their own opinion. And if you have one, drop it in the comments. Do you think the market's going to crash? Do you think we're hitting that breaking point? Or do you think things are just going to keep steadily moving ahead as they always have, at least since I pulled those stats back from 1980? It's a good question. And the truth is, nobody really knows. But I can tell you that if you think I'm not privy to it, well, I live in Halifax. I understand the cost of living. I feel the cost of living when I'm looking at my tax bill and my utility bills and my gas bill and my food bill. Really, anything I'm doing, I feel that pinch just like everybody else does. And on top of that, I've been a real estate agent for 10 years. So, for example, almost every time I'm writing an offer, I almost, for some reason, kind of think it's a bit crazy just because I remember the price points from 5 years ago, just like it was yesterday. As an example, I have a semi-detached property going on the market tomorrow in Sackville, and I sold them into that property for $170,000 6 years ago. It's very likely going to sell for $400,000 to $425,000 this year. So is that hard for me to wrap my head around? Yeah, a little bit, to be honest. It really, really is. If anything, if we see any softening at all, I think it'll just be a bit of a more stagnant period that will kind of allow wages and stuff like that to catch up. But truthfully, I don't really see that happening. And I don't really see prices going down, because if they start going down, people simply just aren't going to move. They're not going to sell. They're not going to lose 100 grand on their biggest investment that they've ever made just because they want to move. The only people that would be moving in a market like that would be people that are forced to move. So maybe there's a divorce, maybe there's a death in the family, maybe you have to move out of the province for some reason or another, or maybe you're forced to sell for financial reasons that are kind of out of your control, or maybe ones that are in your control. But my point is, I don't think the market is going to go down. But again, nobody really knows, and you're entitled to your opinion, and all that is good, and I'd love to hear about it in the comments below. But here's the big thing that I want to talk about as well. I understand that 5-year and 10-year projection that I had up on the screen earlier is very crazy and almost a scary number to even try to wrap your head around. But my point is, every single decade, that number seemed crazy to wrap your head around until it happened. So let's take a look at the numbers on the screen right now. So in 1980, the average sale price was $53,000. Fast forward 10 years to 1990, it's $97,000. That's an 83% increase in a decade. If I go to 2000, that's 32% increase up to $128,000 average sale price. Going up to 2010, now we're at $254,000, which is almost 100% increase. So it almost doubled from 2000 to 2010. And then in 2020, it went up 46% from the previous decade to $370,000. And again, just to reiterate, right now it's at $580,000 across the HRM. Now, on top of this, think about everything that's happened since 1980. We had some crazy interest rates. We had tons of stuff going on in the world. We had a complete financial crisis. All these things happened, and the market still ticked along at its average of almost 5% year over year here in small old Halifax, Nova Scotia. So my point is, it always seems crazy until it's right in front of your eyes. It always seems crazy until it's right there. And truthfully, I remember people in 2021 talking about the real estate market and talking about, I'm going to wait for the market to cool down before I buy a house. A lot of those people still haven't bought, but think about this. If you did buy in 2021 at an average purchase price in HRM, now, today in 2024, you would have approximately $120,000 of equity in your property as an average sale price statement. So, and that's not including what you've paid off on the mortgage in those 3 years as well, which I know would be minimal based on the interest rates. But my point is, it always seems crazy until it's right in front of your face. So, where will we be in 10 years? Nobody really knows, and you're entitled to your opinion. And if you're still here watching, you obviously have a bit of interest in this topic, and I would love to hear about it in the comments below of what you think is going to happen to the real estate market here in Halifax. And to me personally, I'm not going to sit on the fence on this one. I'll give you my opinion. If I was a betting man, I would bet on around a 5% increase year over year for the next 10 years, just like we've been seeing since 1980. That's my honest opinion. I think it's going to be slow and steady the way it's always been. I think history will repeat itself. And really, there's only one thing that's for sure. No matter what the outcome, it is definitely going to be an interesting time to be living on the East Coast of Canada. Now, if you're still here watching and you got any value out of this video, all I ask is that you hit that like button and hit that subscribe button so you don't miss any of my future content. And that'll help push this out to more people like you who may be interested in seeing content about the Halifax and Nova Scotia real estate markets. And until next time, thank you so much for watching. I really appreciate your support and have a great day.